Ministers, Minister Lin, Minister Panapa, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is my pleasure to open the Forum for Democratic Cooperation, a platform brought together by Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Taiwan, together with the Forum 2000 Foundation and with the support of the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy. I would like to thank our partners for being so generous and so cooperative in helping us to put this together, which is the first gathering of Forum 2000 in Taiwan and in fact in the region in Indo-Pacific and in Asia. So it's twice the pleasure of welcoming you here. The timing of the conference, we believe, is very appropriate. As you are all aware, democracy in the world and in this region as well is facing a series of profound challenges. We are witnessing a growing geopolitical uncertainty, the internal weakening of democratic institutions amplified by external interference, a global economic rebalancing increasingly shaped by China and connected to the resilience and control of critical supply chains. We are also seeing a rapid technological change, including the race for dominance in the field of artificial intelligence. The Indo-Pacific is among the central arenas in this global test, and here, as in other places, the shared challenges and threats cannot be addressed by any democratic country or any democratic actor alone. If we are to succeed and protect democracy, we are bound to work together and face these challenges collectively and with determination. We have gathered here today to discuss how democracies can and should become stronger and more resilient, and how they should reinvent their cooperation in the new geopolitical context. Since Forum 2000 is a Prague-based organization established by President Havel, allow me to use a Czech example to illustrate this. Since 1989, when the Velvet Revolution took place, relations between Czech Republic and Taiwan have been shaped by shared democratic values. The intellectual author of this course was our founder Václav Havel, dissident playwright, and the first democratically elected post-communist president. Havel imprinted a specific vision on the Czech foreign policy, which remains, to an extent, in place today. As in some other cases, he saw parallels between Taiwan's democratic transformation and the Czech struggle against authoritarianism. He felt these two new democracies could enrich and strengthen each other by mutual support, sharing of experience, and increased cooperation. In the 1990s, he promoted a foreign policy centered on human rights, openly supporting democratic movements around the world, and maintaining warm ties with Taiwanese leaders despite pressure from Beijing. Under his influence, Prague became one of the first Central European capitals to engage Taiwan politically and culturally. Also, some of the later Czech governments in the first 2 decades of this century often prioritized increasing trade and investment cooperation with the communist China. Havel's legacy endured on many other levels, in civil society, in a significant part of diplomatic and political class, and among large segments of the society in general. Havel remained personally close to Taiwan, visited Taipei in 2004, and was honored here for strengthening bilateral relations. Since 2019, Czech-Taiwanese ties have deepened again on the top political level, and Senate President Miloš Vystrčil's 2020 visit to Taipei symbolized this return to value-based diplomacy. And 2 years ago, in 2024, the Forum 2000 Foundation welcomed President Tsai Ing-wen, who opened the Forum 2000 conference together with Czech President Václav Havel. The Czech-Taiwanese cooperation, Petr Pavel, I'm sorry. The Czech-Taiwanese cooperation has over the years expanded beyond a value-based friendship. Today, the two countries cooperate in the fields of technology, education, cybersecurity, and parliamentary exchanges. Taiwan is among the most important foreign investors in Czechia, ahead of China. And Czechia, I am proud to say, is one of Taiwan's closest partners in Europe. Now, coming back to the objectives of our meeting here. This conference, the Forum for Democratic Cooperation, builds upon previous efforts of the Forum 2000 Foundation conducted in cooperation with the National Endowment for Democracy, the US-Japan Foundation, and the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy. These efforts have been aimed at exploring and enhancing the space for democratic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region and are aligned with our broader objective to offer space for information exchange, mutual support, and coordination among democratic actors globally, as well as in various strategic regions around the world, such as Africa or Latin America. We perceive Indo-Pacific as a key region in global cooperation of democratic actors, and we see Taiwan as a natural partner and ally in this regard. It is therefore our intention that this gathering is not a one-off event, but one of the building blocks of a more systematic, longer-term, and strategically conceived work. We look forward to continuing our cooperation with Taiwanese organizations, as well as other relevant partners in the Indo-Pacific space in pursuing these efforts. And now, it is my honor to invite to the stage the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Taiwan, His Excellency Lin Qianlu. Your Excellency.
Good morning. The Honorable Paulson Panapa, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Labor and Trade of Tuvalu, Ms. Delia Albert, former Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines, and Mr. Thomas Pacichak, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, and Mr. Mentas Adomenas, former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, and Mr. Jacob Kalapau, Executive Director of the Forum 2000 Foundation. Esteemed parliamentarians, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be with you all for the Forum for Democratic Cooperation. I would like to start by thanking the Forum 2000 Foundation for hosting this special event. Founded by the legendary Václav Havel, the foundation is a key facilitator, helping proponents of democracies and freedom find solidarity. I just returned from Prague for attending another forum on global security, and I delivered a speech on redefining Taiwan-Europe partnership, focusing on Taiwan's strategic role in Europe's reindustrialization and rearmament. So here we focus on how to strengthen our democratic partnership. And we meet today as a critical time marked by geopolitical, economic, and technological challenges facing us all. But I'm confident that this gathering will pave the way to closer, more meaningful collaborations in the years to come. Democratic societies are facing a sophisticated, multi-pronged assault from authoritarian expansionism. And we have seen these authoritarian states' attempts at economic coercion, relentless cyber attacks, calculated disinformation campaigns, and other measures designed to fracture our societies. And we find ourselves also grappling with overlapping crises from the tragedy of the ongoing war in Ukraine to turmoil in the Middle East, to intensifying strategic competition between major powers. Considered today, these challenges teach a single lesson. In the 21st century, geography alone no longer ensures security. Any assault on freedom in one corner of the world is a threat to democracy everywhere. Like each of your nations, Taiwan is directly affected by today's geopolitical tensions. Taiwan is a vibrant democracy located at the heart of the first island chain in the Indo-Pacific, and we are a crucial front line, proving ground for global democratic resilience. For decades, the people of Taiwan have lived under the shadow of military intimidation, relentless cyber attacks, diplomatic isolation, and cognitive warfare. But as you can see, Taiwan is not a society paralyzed by fear. Rather, it's a nation that has remained firmly open, fiercely democratic, impressively innovative, and extraordinarily resilient. Our story is a testament to democratic values. Democracy in Taiwan is not merely a political system. It's our way of life. It's our hard-earned identity, and it's our sacred trust. We have shown the world that democracy is not a weakness. When a democracy is clad in resilient institutions, heartened by active civic participation, and supported by international partners, it demonstrates an unshakable strength. And we have transformed vulnerabilities into catalysts for positive change. We have shown that a free society is ultimately the most adaptable and creative society. Taiwan has had a unique journey. Today, it serves as an indispensable hub connecting democratic partners across the Indo-Pacific, Europe, and North America. Not merely a bystander in this region, Taiwan is an active, vital force endeavoring to maintain regional peace and stability. Let's be clear. Peace across the Taiwan Strait is a local or regional issue. It's a global imperative. Nearly half of the world's container shipping passes through this narrow waterway. Any conflict or disruption here would be catastrophic for global economy, and it would outstrip in severity the supply chain shocks we have witnessed from disruptions or other maritime choke points. And so, by standing firm against authoritarian pressure, Taiwan is defending the maritime highway that expedites global commerce and sustains the entire Indo-Pacific. Our regional role is anchored in our economic and technological leadership. Taiwan produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. And these microchips are powering the future, from AI to communication systems to medical breakthroughs and critical infrastructure. Supply chain security is now equivalent to national security, as President Lai Ching-te has emphasized. Building trusted technology Taiwan, building trusted technology ecosystem. I think it's the establishment of a resilient, non-red supply chains is a pillar of global democratic defense. I think Taiwan stands ready to work with all of you to ensure that emerging technologies are used to empower human freedom rather than to expand authoritarian surveillance and control. Under President Lai values-based diplomacy, Taiwan is determined to step up on the foundation of freedom and democracy, respect for human rights, and the rule of international order. And we will continue to partner with like-minded countries on pressing global issues like economic security and cyber security, and all other issues related to our strengthening of national defense and the whole society resilience. Acting in concord, we will continue to maintain the rules-based international order with all like-minded nations. No one nation, no matter how powerful, can face today's multifaceted challenges alone. But when we stand united, our collective strength, rooted in openness, innovation, and shared values, is unbeatable. And Taiwan looks forward to working with you to secure a brighter future. Of course, I wish this event a great success and all of you the best of health and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for those powerful remarks. Indeed, the global importance of Taiwan, as well as the importance of economic resilience and defense and security cooperation, will be part of our discussions and increasingly important part of our discussions. Now, right after these opening remarks, we will listen to two panels. First one is called Making Democracy Stronger, Resilience, Public Trust and Leadership in a Tougher World. And the second, Beyond Great Power Politics, What Can Middle and Small Democracies Actually Do? These sessions, which feature an excellent lineup of high-level speakers, will address how democracies cope with the growing challenges that I mentioned earlier and that Minister mentioned as well, and that most of the democratic world is facing. The speakers will discuss how democracies can become stronger, more resilient, and more effective in responding to a tougher geopolitical context. Also, as the strategic shifts among the major global powers are becoming increasingly pronounced, the second session will discuss how smaller and middle countries should approach this situation. With that, thank you again for being here. Thank you for participating in the FDC. We look forward to a productive discussion, and I would like to invite the moderator of the first panel, Ms. Kathy Chen of Thinking Taiwan, to take the floor.
Okay, I know there's a lot of people downstage, but lights are beaming in my eyes, so I can't see all of you. But good morning, everyone. So can I welcome Carl Gershman, Ling Fei Fan, and Mantis Adominus on stage, please. Please. So again, thank you, Yakub, for the kind introduction. My name is Katie Chen. I am the Senior Advisor of the Thinking Taiwan Foundation. I was also former Vice President of the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. Welcome to the first panel of the Forum of Democratic Cooperation. And the theme of this year's forum is the future of democratic strength, truth, trust, resilience, and cooperation. And the theme of this panel is making democracy stronger, resilience, public trust, leadership in a tougher world. Over the past several decades, democracy has faced repeated tests and moments of uncertainty. But today, many democratic societies find themselves confronting a particularly difficult combination of pressure all at once. Intensifying geopolitical competition, technological disruption, economic insecurity, information manipulation, political polarization, and declining public confidence in our democratic institutions. At the international level, authoritarian powers have become more assertive, more coordinated, and increasingly sophisticated in how they project influence abroad and exploit vulnerabilities within democratic systems. At domestic level, many democracies are struggling to respond to growing public frustration over issues such as inequality, governance, institution trust, and social cohesion as our societies become more polarized. But even with these challenges, I would say that democracy remains remarkably resilient. And around the world, citizens continue to demand accountability, transparency, participation, and dignity. Democratic societies continue to demonstrate extraordinary capacity for self-correction, adaptation, and renewal. And as we were tackling these challenges, I thought that it is really important for us to come together today and answer some of these very important questions. For example, what makes democracy resilient today in today's world? And how can democratic leaders respond to external pressure, internal polarization without undermining democratic norms themselves? And today, we have three esteemed speakers with us on our panel. First is Carl Gershman, the founding president of the National Endowment for Democracy, whose decades of work with democratic movement and institutions around the world had given him a very unique perspective in global trajectory of democracy. And we're also joined by Mr. Lin Feifan, Deputy Secretary General of the National Security Council of Taiwan, whose experience spans civic activism, democratic participation, national security, and Taiwan's frontline experience confronting authoritarian pressure. And finally, we have Mantas Adominas, Secretary General of the Community of Democracy and former Deputy Foreign Minister of Lithuania, who brings deep experience from Europe on democratic resilience, strategic competition, and challenges facing frontline democracies. Please join me to welcome the three esteemed panelists. So I would like to start the panel with a more broad questions for the three of you. So for decades, democracies has often discussed as that it will, I would say, continue to sustain itself, and the success of democracies is expected. And today, these assumptions seemed a bit less certain. So one thing that seems increasingly clear is that many citizens today are not necessarily, they are not rejecting democracy itself, but some of them are questioning whether democratic system can still deliver effective governance, stability, and long-term solutions. So the question that I have for you is that, do democracy today, facing primarily challenges of governance, and the status of democracy today, in your perspective, is what? And does democracy is facing the challenges of its leadership? And how do we tackle the current status of challenges posing on democracies? If I could bring Carl first to share your opinion.
Thank you, Katie, and it's just really great to be here with everyone. I can't see you, but that doesn't matter. It's just wonderful to be here, and I'll imagine the presence of everyone that's here. I came to Taiwan the first time in the fall of 1994. I was, the beginning of NED. Our budget was tiny. We had very little money. And I was looking for ways to somehow expand our influence and our goals without having to, without a budget or a significant budget. And I came here with the idea that Taiwan should create a parallel institution, which eventually became the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy. And I met with Jason Hu, who was the Minister of Information at the time, and he had his own obsessive idea. And his idea was, he had studied under Sam Huntington at Oxford in 1973. And Huntington had just written a book about the third wave of democratization. I think people here know about that. It became very famous. The democratic revolution that took place starting in Portugal in 1974, and then spread to the whole world, except really for the Middle East, in the 1980s and the 1990s. And Jason wanted Taiwan to be recognized as a third wave democracy, which it was. And we heard a little bit about that last night at the panel, the South Korea-Taiwan model. And he wanted to put on a major conference, and he was prepared to put up the resources for it. He called Huntington. Huntington called Larry Diamond. Larry Diamond called me, and here I was in Taiwan. And the next thing we did, the summer of 1995, we organized the most important, I think, democracy conference ever pulled together. It brought 60 of the world's leading political scientists, people like Robert Dahl, Sam Huntington, Seymour Martin Lipset, Larry Diamond, Juan Linz, and so many others, 60 from 25 different countries, to talk about the consolidation of the third wave of democracy. Political leaders came too, like the former prime minister from Russia, Igor Gaidar, the prime minister from Estonia, Mart Laar, the minister of the presidency, Edgardo Benninger from Chile, and all the Taiwan leaders showed up. Not only Lee Dong-wei, but Chen Shui-bian was the mayor of Taipei at the time, and he was there. James Song was the governor of the Taiwan province, and he was there. Lian Chan was the premier, and I mean, everyone came. It was just a big deal. And I think it was, a very significant conference at the time, and then it led to other things, one year after another. We had an event honoring the newly elected president, Lee Dong-wei, in 1996 in the Congress. Never did we organize an event that had more senators and congressmen who came. I mean, Taiwan's popularity was extraordinary. And eventually, this resulted in the establishment of the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy in an enduring partnership. But if Taiwan was a third wave democracy back then, today it is what I would call a frontline democracy. It is at the front lines of the contestation, in a way, the very significant and even in some ways bitter contestation between authoritarianism and democracy in the world. And it is an extremely vital asset to the democratic world. Taiwan anchors the first island chain starting in Japan, running through the Philippines. And so it's a security barrier that restrains China's expansion into the Pacific Ocean. it dominates, one of the dominating countries of the advanced technology and computer chips, and therefore is a technological power. But most importantly, Taiwan is called by a friend of mine, Kedrup Tundup, who is the nephew of the Dalai Lama. He lives here in Taiwan. He wrote recently that Taiwan is a living rebuttal to the idea that a Chinese-speaking, the identity of a Chinese-speaking country is authoritarian, has to be authoritarian because of the culture. In other words, China is not a dictatorship because it has a communist party running the country, but because it's a Confucian society. And the existence of Taiwan as a democracy represents a refutation of that. Before Xi Jinping took over the presidency of China in 2012, he held meetings of all his subordinates and told them that they had to intensify the struggle against universal values, against constitutional government, against free media, against civil society, against the whole idea of the rule of law and universal values. This was an ideological struggle that had to be waged. And so this is something they believed in very, very deeply. And Taiwan, by being a democracy, a free country, is a refutation of that, and it's extremely significant at this time. And I think that as we meet here today and we're thinking about what the next steps need to be, I think that Taiwan should not, I mean, Taiwan, I know Jakub has the idea of Taiwan being a regional hub for democratic discussion, democratic thought, democratic advocacy. I also think it can become a global center, that it's that important for Taiwan to be a global center and to bring people here, like we're doing now, but other people who are, you know, political leaders, political and intellectual leaders, journalists, who would want to come here, because Taiwan is in some ways so much the center of the contestation between democracy and authoritarianism. And in conclusion, let me just say that what the democratic world needs to do, and we talked about this a little bit last night, is to revive the narrative of why democracy. You know, people are discouraged about democracy. China says, you know, we can get things done more efficiently, you know, because we're a dictatorship. And we have to begin now to start reversing this and making the ideological, political argument for why democracy. Why is democracy important? I think that the Norwegian politician Friedman at the Nobel Peace Prize event in December, when they gave the Nobel Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado, that he made a terrific speech about why democracy is essential to peace. You cannot have real peace without democracy and the exchange of ideas and trying to find a middle ground. But it's much more than that. Democracy is important for education. You know, people in democracies have more education, more years of schooling than people in dictatorships, according to studies done of democracy. It is important for health, you know, in terms of infant mortality rates, in terms of the longer lifespan of people living in democracies, in terms of just statistically looking at that, and then economically and economic growth. I mean, North Korea and South Korea are two Korean societies, the same culture. In the 1970s, North Korea actually had a higher per capita income than South Korea, before South Korea really took off. You know what the difference in the GDP between South Korea and North Korea is today? 55 to 1. 55 to 1. That's an extraordinary figure when you think about the difference between a vibrant, growing, open democratic society and a closed, repressive, totalitarian society. And that, I think, is the secret of democracy, the openness, the ability to debate, the ability to work out, to be inclusive for everyone, and to draw on people's creativity, their imagination. Freedom is important, and we have to find a way to defend freedom, and I think Taiwan can become a global hub for the defense of freedom intellectually and politically in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. And so I would turn to Fei Fan to share his thoughts on the challenges of global democracy. And of course, as Carl pointed out, Taiwan has often discussed in the context of regional security, military aggression, and deterrence. But Taiwan is also an example of democratic resilience. So what do you think about the challenges of democracy today, and how you think that Taiwan's democratic resilience can be shared with the rest of the audience and the world?
Okay. Thank you, Katie, and thank you for Forum 2000 to come over to Taiwan to hosting these events. I think our gathering here shows the most critical part of democratic cooperations in the current environment. We are living in I would say that everyone here would describe is quite a turbulent time for democracies. And we have already seen that a lot of different conflicts happens in the different region, and the assault on democracy that's happening in a lot of different places as well. That's the environment we are in. But I think Taiwan's example here shows at least one thing that I really like to share. If you look at today's environment in Taiwan, there's a very pivotal watershed, I think, happened 30 years ago. And if not everyone understand this, I can explain a little bit. We just marked the 30th anniversary of our first direct presidential elections. So the 30th anniversary of democracy, of democratic Taiwan, is actually an achievement, or you can say it, very pivotal foundation for not just for Taiwanese people, but also for the rest of the world. Carl just mentioned about the whole history that, 30 years ago, when people gathering here and discuss about the third wave for democracy. But we shouldn't forget that throughout these 30 years, that there are many challenges that we have been facing, right? And there are many different tasks, and also sometimes you'll feel like whether people have the full understanding, recognitions on the importance of democracy. You sometimes would doubt, you sometimes would have different thinking. And internally, we have a lot of debates, we have a lot of disagreements. But after experiencing all this, Taiwan still shows importance and also shows that the resilience among the people and also among the whole democratic systems. And despite that, all the disagreements that we had internally, at least these 30 years shows that Taiwan still can be seen in the world as solidarity and with the solidarity, a very unified democratic society. And facing outside the world, I think that Taiwan still maintain the confidence of being a democracy, and we still treasure that all the hard-earned achievements that we had. I think that's a very important foundation for us to recognize that in the so difficult time and challenging time right now, that how we have been through all these challenges. So that's the first point I would like to mention, just to look back on the history of Taiwan in these 30 years. But the second thing I want to share is that really we are in the world that people tend to forget how to tell the story about democracy. So as Carl just mentioned, that, well, in democracy it's not perfect, right? We got debates, we got so many different type of issues. But the importance of telling the story in the environment right now, I think that's that is very pivotal for people's understanding and especially people's recognition of our everyday life. The way that we sustain, the way that we can continue to be a thriving society, democracy, and prosper democracy, I think that's pretty important. But usually in the current environments that people tend to think about, well, if you look at Taiwan, Taiwan is a place that every day on the news headlines, usually the issue would be military confrontation, it would be the Chinese military exercise, it would be the cognitive warfare, disinformation campaign against Taiwan, it would be infiltration, and sometimes it would be trade. The issue would be tariff and others. But just don't forget that how should Taiwan to share the story to the world, and how democracies among all the partners and allies here that every country representing in this room should tell the better story about democratic institutions and how to tell the better story about the value of democracy. I think that's a key point that we kind of lost in the current debates globally. If you look at China or Russia, they have a very clear goal. Their goal is not just to expand their military power. They're also spending a lot of resources in the area to shape the whole environment and cognitive warfare, try to discredit democracies, try to discredit the democratic rule government everywhere. They're not just doing it to Taiwan, they're doing it to Japan, they're doing it to Philippines, they're doing it to US, to Europe. They're spreading all these kind of informations, no matter it's online or within the society. The purpose is clear, that they want to discredit people's confidence in democracy to achieve their broader objective. That is to let people have disagreement between each other, and later to form a better environment for them to achieve their objectives, their strategic goals. But whether democracies have the same understanding about this importance to cooperate with each other, to come up with these common strategies. I think the second point I really want to mention is that in the nowadays environment, if we don't have a common strategy to against or to push back the certain narrative from the authoritarian regimes, we will be tear apart as individuals, as individual countries. And later on, it will be easy for those authoritarian regimes like China, Russia, and even Iran, North Korea, to form the force against us. And you would see a lot of loopholes within every democracies, that sometimes there's an issue here, an issue there, and you couldn't find a way to counter that, and you will see the retreat or the reset of the democracy. That's something that we don't want to see, right? So the importance of this cooperation, I think this forum today shows the importance of discussing democracy and come up with a common strategy. And Taiwan, as I mentioned, we are actually in the center of the global debate, not just about the geopolitics, not just about the military potential conflicts, but also shows that the value-based discussions, the two ideologies, that one represented by Taiwan is clearly freedom, democracy, human rights, and how we can uphold this in the current environment and use Taiwan as a beacon of example or hope to tell the story about how difficult that environment is and how we can sustain ourselves to go over through this very challenging, turbulent time. I think I will stop here first, and we'll open to more questions and discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fei Fan. And let me turn to Mantis. You're in a very unique position as the Secretary General of the Community of Democracy, but you also serve as Deputy Foreign Minister of Lithuania. So can you share your perspective with us about the challenges and also what you see is the difficulties of democracy it faces today?
Thank you. Thank you. And it's great to be here. I feel particularly close to Taiwan, not just because I've been, I think it's my 14th time here, but also there are only two countries that separate Lithuania from Taiwan. Unfortunately, those countries are China and Russia. And that makes us particularly close, despite the size of those countries, because we are facing the same challenges and the same dangers that Lithuania and Taiwan, well, have in common. And I will start where sort of Carl has finished, the third wave of democratization. It now has sort of not only petered out, but it actually sort of, it's been receding, it's been receding for the last 20 years, the achievements of the third wave of democratization. And the fears and the perceptions of democracy not delivering, democracy underperforming, they're not new. Democracy has not delivered in the past. I mean, if you look, it's only the second half of the 20th century that democracies were on the average kind of richer and more prosperous than the alternatives. So it's not always been the case. It's not unique to the current situation. Democracy underperforming due to its constraints of electoral cycles and its need to achieve societal consensus in order to have long-term strategic things, and and then they're being curtailed by the election and all that. Again, that's not new. That's why UK had to have national unity government in the wartime to compensate for that sort of form. So what is unique to the current situation? Unique to the current situation is, I think, sort of two factors. Maybe one is that democracy has become uniquely and asymmetrically vulnerable under the development of technology in its present state, information sphere and society. Information warfare, something that Taiwan and Lithuania have experienced long before most of Western European and other sort of actors in the free world. And in fact, quite a lot of methods which were later exported to US were tried and tested in Lithuania. But information warfare, that's a uniquely sort of asymmetrical threat to democracy, insofar as our legitimacy relies on the expressed will, mentalities, and narratives prevalent in society. That's not the case about authoritarianism. They're not sort of, damaged by the fact that sort of by disinformation and by skewed mindsets and then by sort of conspiracy theories and by polarization. In fact, they thrive on it. They sort of, the deluded people are easier to sort of control, manipulate, and govern. Whereas democracies are sort of vulnerable, and there are lots, and with the advent of AI, this threatening is already becoming exponentially sort of vulnerability. In the 80s, when we would tune into the Voice of America or BBC, the truth was corrosive to the totalitarian regime of Soviet Union in which I lived. Now that's no longer the case, and the authoritarian regimes have managed to make themselves immune to truth by attacking the adherence to truth globally. So this is one of a series of asymmetrical sort of vulnerabilities that democracies now possess. And this is, I think, one of the major challenges, how to build resilience to this new stage of development. And at the bottom of it is that democracy as a practiced political system has been formulated in many ways to the realities of the 19th century. Live human communities, commitment to truth and morality, fairly unified public arena, sort of with some competition, but still sort of fairly sort of unified. And this has all been gone. And now so we operate under the software which has been written for 19th century hardware. And now our societal hardware has developed in unrecognizable ways. And we have to revise the way we think about democracy, democratic governance, and democratic decision making taking place. So that's one factor which is different. Another factor is a kind of tectonic factor, is fracturing of this consensus principles or strategic framework of free world working towards unified democratic goal. And this is what we're here today to discuss today: how to restore the community of values. And not to skip the elephant in the room. Of course, it is. For many years we lived under the sort of strategic guidance of a benevolent hegemon, the superpower United States. And now that it's no longer interested in sort of pursuing this promotion of this framework of democratic sort of international order and rules-based order throughout the world, and it makes life of small and middle states very difficult. And how to transform community of values into shared political will. That's the sort of the fundamental question. And the third different factor is, of course, that authoritarian regimes have become aggressive. They were on the back foot through the 90s and through the first decade of this century, and now they realize that they can exploit vulnerabilities and weaknesses of democracy and project their strength. And if we look at the episode, which I think hasn't been discussed sufficiently, the interdiction of the flight of President of Taiwan to Swatini. This is sort of shows the new stage, how sort of what was more or less sort of global commons is being weaponized by increasingly aggressive China. This is a new stage, how sort of authoritarian regimes are flexing their muscles to project their strength and to impose the order that is conformant to their sort of interests and to their sort of aspirations. No longer sort of it's the rule of international norms is the prevalent paradigm, but a shared, well, if they project strength because they can, and if they take territory because they can. That's what Russia is doing in Ukraine currently. So, this is a very threatening situation, because now, and as Carl and Fifan rightly pointed out, we have no coherent, unified, proactive narrative of what stage of the world we want to be in. It's not just a matter of renewing democracy's narrative in an apologetic way, why democracy is better, why you would rather live in democracy than non-democracy, but what characterized the third wave of democracy, there was a very clear vision of the democratic, human rights respecting, norms governed world, which would be peaceful, secure, and mutually conducive in progress and prosperity. And we've sort of lost that narrative because we stopped arguing when we thought that third wave of democracy brought the end of history. Authoritarian regimes did not cease developing their own counter-narrative, their own alternative vision of the world. And we have to catch up and sort of, we have to pick up and create this framework. And now, what can small states do in this instance? Again, an example of Lithuania. I mean, it cannot punch sort of any considerable weight in terms of military, sort of political or economic power. But what small states can do is they can shape narrative. They can, especially working together. This is, to quote Havel, this is the weakness, the strength of the weak. They can sort of, by testifying to the truth, they can change the perception of the world in which we live. And two examples. One is Lithuania in 1990. This was the first Soviet-occupied nation to break free from the Soviet Union. And we were sort of very strongly advised by a number of democratic leaders, don't do that, don't spoil the game for Gorbachev. He was the cherished figure of the West. And, Lithuanians, pesky Lithuanians, declaring independence in the March of 1990, when sort of, the world was celebrating other achievements, they were just spoiling the show. And had we not done that, it may well be that the Soviet Union could still exist in a kind of renovated, modernized fashion. But we faced this sort of economic blockades, later sort of attempt of military takeover and bloodshed and all that, in order to testify to the truth that nobody can impose the way of life on us. We are a free nation, and we want to live this. Second episode is and just to go back to that, and that showed an example to a number of other nations, South Caucasus, Ukraine, other Baltic nations, which followed the suit. And then Soviet Union was done. And the geopolitical reality in the third wave was thereby sort of nearing its completion in a kind of major tectonic shift. The second episode is from my practice as Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. And when Eric Wang, who was Taiwan's representative in Riga, came to discuss the opening of the representative office in Vilnius, we sort of, it was very clear to us that, look, we don't have to go with the China-imposed Taipei representative office. Taiwan has the right to be under its own name, to call what it wants to be called, and not by something that authoritarian regimes dictate. And therefore, we sort of said, of course, you can open Taiwanese representative office in Lithuania, because that's our sort of values, that's our principles. And by doing that, we changed paradigm. We changed paradigm. Of course, there was immense economic coercion from China. Actually, it didn't hurt as much as sort of, as we feared it would. Lithuania recovered. In 2 years, it was exporting to East Asia, outside China, more. And the export grew by an amount which was greater than our previous exports to China overall. So, even economically it did not hurt. But politically, it changed the perception that such mammoths like China cannot be resisted. They can. They can be resisted by a country which is the size of one Beijing suburb. And this is, this is a very important testimony. By attesting to this truth, we can show that international order needs to be preserved. And this is what we are doing here now. We are trying to find ways of how to coalesce shared values into joint political will. And this is the sort of the biggest question that is facing us all, because all our countries have their own interests, all have something to lose from confrontation. But unless we do that, we will fall victims one by one. And that's why sort of Taiwan is such an important test case. The free world cannot afford to lose Taiwan. And now is a particularly dangerous time. Now is a particularly fraught time. And so we need all the solidarity. We need to show that actually our values is not just something we say during election campaigns. That's something where what we put our sort of political energies and will to in order to save freedom, to save democracy in one country. By saving that in Taiwan, we save for the whole world. And the hope that actually there can be a sort of peaceful, democratic order globally. Because unless we become proactive and strategic in acting for this, unless we envisage that actually China can be, and it deserves, and its people deserve to live in a free society. It may not come in my lifetime, but we have to have this strategic goal. Unless we have this sort of long-term strategy, we become passive. We become at the receiving end of increasingly proactive and aggressive authoritarian regimes. Unless we have our own positive vision, we are bound, unfortunately, to seize this wave receding and receding and receding. And this is something we cannot afford. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mantis. Yeah, before I open the floor up for questions, I want to circle back, building on what Mantis just said about building solidarities and having our own narratives. I want to come back to Carl, so that I was wondering if you could share your opinion and your experience of the actual theme of this panel, how to make democracy stronger. Do you have any advice for those of us who are in the field of democracy, democratic advocacy? And also, can you also share with us, now that we've talked about the challenges facing democracies and the status of democracies today, what gives you confidence that by working together, democracies could really come up on top and combat authoritarian influence?
Wow. Okay. If I had, one thing to add to the discussion, and people who are part of our community, which is a community of Democrats, a community of people who believe in democracy and advocate for it, and it now has an institutional framework in the world over the past 30 or 40 years. It's not going to disappear. But the one thing that I think we have to recognize and put more emphasis on what I sometimes call the geostrategic. In other words, there's the ideological dimension, the political dimension, the human rights dimension, but there's also the geostrategic. I mean, when the Russians invaded Ukraine in February of 2022, very, very few people thought Ukraine would survive. And this was during the Biden administration, and nobody prevented it, nobody stopped it. It happened. The people who stopped it were Ukraine. And who would have thought that they had the courage, but also the imagination and the development of all this drone technology now? It's a miracle. And it has, in a way, their courage, their leadership, they've had support, of course. They haven't been totally alone, but they have done this. They have done this. And I just think that we have to recognize that in addition to ideological, political advocacy and confidence, you need geostrategic deterrence, and that's essential. And I worry sometimes about Taiwan. Is Taiwan unified enough? Democracies, look, our democracy is a divided democracy, and Taiwan is a divided democracy. And you don't want to become unified after the attack. You want to be unified in order to prevent the attack. This is really, really tough. And so I think that, is something that needs to be emphasized. And then, what makes me hopeful? I mean, this was also discussed last night. There were some good statements made about it. I mean, Ronald Reagan in his Westminster address talked about the instinct, the human instinct for freedom. I mean, people have dignity. People want to be free. And it's not just for the West. That's what Taiwan represents. It's not just for the West. Taiwan is a Chinese-speaking democracy with a Confucian culture. It's not just for the West. It's a symbol of the universality of democracy. And there are people all over the world during this bad period, and you're right about the reverse wave. And we have to, it may be that what's happened in Hungary will help us begin to recover and begin to find a new momentum in terms of reversing the retreat of democracy. But during this period, when, look, the United States is no longer playing the role that it used to play, and I am very troubled about that. But people, the Gen Z generation in Indonesia, in Morocco, in so many different countries, and in other countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Guatemala. I mean, people are still fighting for freedom and democracy. And that fight is nowhere more intense than, in the countries like Ukraine and Taiwan, which face an existential threat from a much larger external enemy. And look what's happened. In other words, and I think that people, are prepared to struggle for the values of freedom because it represents their dignity. Yes, they want economic security, and as I pointed out, democracy is a much better way to get that economic security than totalitarianism, whatever China may say. And China, China has serious, serious economic problems. The premier who was Hu Yaobang, who was ousted in 1987, why was he ousted as premier of China? He said that unless China opens up and reforms, it's going to have constant trouble, constant protests. His death 2 years later was what precipitated the Tiananmen revolt, in which people didn't only rise up in Tiananmen Square, it was 400 cities across China. And then you had the white paper protests just in 2022. China is, we shouldn't assume that China is forever a dictatorship. And that's why it's nervous. I mean, I think China views Taiwan as an existential threat because it's a free country and it represents the idea that you can be Chinese-speaking and be in Asia and also believe in freedom and democracy. That's what it stands for. It's very simple. And I think China feels that that's an existential threat. Xi Jinping is not a secure man. He's very insecure because he knows that these values that he called for the intensification of the struggle against, values like, what are they? Constitutional government, free media, civil society? I mean, these are fundamental aspects of normal societies that people are not going to give up. And I just think that we have to master the ability to fight for these values. And what that involves is not taking freedom and democracy for granted. You know, Václav Havel, one thing I'll never forget about Havel was he always worried that affluent, successful societies would become complacent. And one of the things I admired so greatly about him is that once the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, then the Czech Republic had achieved its own freedom, he didn't stop fighting. He would, you know, he reached out to people like Liu Xiaobo, people like Osvaldo Paya in Cuba, Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma. He reached out to them and he gave them his solidarity. He didn't want the Nobel Prize for himself. He wanted it for the Dalai Lama. He wanted it for Aung San Suu Kyi. And I think that sentiment is something that can inspire us all.
Thank you very much, Carl. So I will use the last few minutes before I turn to the audience for Fei Fan to share your thoughts on how democracy could work better. And also a large part of how democracy could work better includes the younger generation. And given your experience in civic activism, perhaps you could also share your perspective on the youth participation in democratic resilience as well.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I think I 100% agree with Carl's points. And I think one thing I would like to add is we really need to come up, and I should say we really need to speak up for democracy and to share the story of democracy louder together. At the current environment, as we all recognize that with the all the attacks or assaults on democracy from the authoritarian regime, all these type of different warfare, gray zone, connected warfares, that if we don't come up with a strong story, a strong evidence about how important to have a democracy, a functional democracy, to safeguard people's life and also to treasure that all the way of life that we have. I think that's, we will be subject to the attacks again and again by these authoritarian regimes. And later, to some point, people will have, doubts, skepticisms on your own self. So we need to come up with the story, the same story, and perhaps the stronger voices on democracy. I think that's point number one. The second thing is about, again, Taiwan's experience. Taiwan wants to lead. Taiwan have the ability to lead about the storytelling of democracy. We have this experience throughout the 30 years, I think. One example, you can see how difficult position we're in. 30 years ago, when the first presidential elections was held, that during that time, China is firing missiles across the Taiwan Strait. But the first presidential elections, under so huge pressure, especially from the PLA military pressures, that we got over 75% of the turnout, that people willing to show up and to cast a ballot to show the solidarity of the Taiwanese people and to determine our own future. That's 30 years ago. When Carl was mentioning about Ukraine, I was thinking about 2014. The movement I participated in, Katie was there as well, in the whole movement. The Sunflower Movement is also another example that when the international community was saying, say goodbye to Taiwan, I'm not sure that how many people recognize or remember that article, famous article, arguing that Taiwan might not be able to sustain if Chinese continue the pressures against Taiwan. And And to some degree, people believe that the future of Taiwan is already been decided. There's no chance for Taiwanese survival to these pressures, and we might be another Hong Kong. There was a famous argument about this. But 2014, when no one think that Taiwan could survive on such pressures, that Taiwanese people showed up and to participate in the civic movement, fighting against the Chinese economic coercion and all these Chinese tactics for to absorb Taiwan. Over, I think, 500,000 people participate in a single movement that lasting for 24 days, occupying the parliament, while during that time many people are arguing about whether that's democratic. But to the end, you see that the spirit of the Taiwanese people, when every time there's a crisis, there's an attack, or there's a challenge, that Taiwanese people always showed up and always shows their responsibilities and also their confidence in democracy. And they really believe. My generation hasn't experienced the darkened side of the authoritarian regime. I born in 1988. That's after the lift of the martial law. So we didn't have that memory, physical memory. But after all this, I think the younger generation of Taiwanese people, I'm not that young, as you can tell, but our the so-called Gen Z, or the even younger generation in Taiwan, if you look at that throughout this couple of years experience, you still feel the same energy that people want to participate in every democratic process. So that story shouldn't be neglected, and this story should be told in a better way to help the society and global community to recognize that Taiwan is actually in a leading position of democracy. And if you look at a lot of democracy here, that young people usually don't turn out to vote. But in Taiwan, when we have elections, usually young people come out and vote, and the turnout would be 70% over 65%. Compared to a lot of democracy, that's unimaginable. But that story, under the attack by Chinese authoritarian connected warfare, is usually being neglected. It's usually not being seen. So we need to collect all these stories and tell the international audience, and especially our younger generation, about a better story about democracy. And we should share that again and again, and to consistently to tell and shape the narrative, and to push back the certain connected warfare that was by the Chinese side. They don't want us to believe in democracy, but we need to let people believe in ourselves. And we have already shown an example. And I should say that Taiwan is a country that we are willing to lead the international democratic alliance. And we have the abilities. Just give us the same chance, the equal chance that we can get onto the international stage. Then we will have a very good story to share with everyone. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Fei Fan. Thank you, Fei Fan. For Mantis, very quickly, share your last thoughts before I probably have only time for maybe one question from the audience before we have to end this panel.
In order not to reiterate what has already been said, very important points, I just want to address one issue. Yes, democracy has to overhaul its governance. We have to apply a simple test, a war test. Would the current procedure of decision-making, of implementation of decisions be valid, be effective if we were at war? If we had to have several years before this sort of, this political decision is taken to rearm and actually arms arrive. No, well, clearly not. And the thing is, we are at war. And unless we start thinking that, the vacation from history, the peace dividend is over, then we will not feel the urgency that we have to cut the red tape. We have to speed up the process because we live in an extremely sort of speedy world. And well, how to do that? And here again, I would like to point at Ukraine, not the fundamentals that this nation resisting, but actually just because Ukrainian government was so weak even before the war. Sort of people have developed horizontal networks of taking the action collectively and only involving minimally the bureaucratic structures. And this helped Ukraine to mobilize its civic resources and to create parallel structures which can function under constant attack. And so, if you look at, for example, how Ukrainian military industry, research and testing in the battlefield is kind of horizontally organized, it doesn't have to go up, wait for several institutions' approval and go back in several years. It's a cycle which turns around in weeks rather than years, let alone months. So, this is an example that, for example, we should learn from this, how to actually rethink, restructure our democratic institutions and decision-making channels so that they are capable of functioning under intense, massive, decentralized, multicentric attack. And because we are in a hybrid way under such attack, and unless we do that, unless we build that resilience, already inbuilt resilience, and create a system which is capable of functioning under war conditions, then we will have, unfortunately, attack on us in one way or the other. So, vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, you have to prepare for war, and this is what democracies have to do, to realize that we are no longer at peace. And this, I think, should instill urgency, both in our coalition making, in gatherings as these. We have to create preconditions for shared political will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're actually at time. I was wondering if I have time to take one question, or we're at time. We could do it. One question. Okay. Okay. I will turn to the audience. Oh, now I can see you. Does anyone have questions for our panelists? There, gentleman there. And please tell us your name and your organization, please.
My name is Mahmoud Galal, Ambassador for the Republic of Somaliland. Thank you very much for your presentation and comments. Just a point Carl expressed subtly, just like to follow up on that. And what it is what do we do to face the challenges? Because democracy is a set of principles. When a major democracy undermines those principles and the rules-based international order, how do emerging democracies and, I suppose, smaller democracies address this to prevent authoritarian regimes becoming emboldened? So that's my question.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Harl, or any other panelists.
First of all, I want to greet you. My best friend in college was from Somaliland, Ibrahim Samatar. You may know the name. He died about 15 years ago. But he was a dear friend, and we reconnected when he rediscovered me 25 years after graduation. He came to the NED, where I was, and said, "We are fighting for our survival, our freedom and independence, and we want your help." So we reconnected, and I was able to be very helpful to my dear friend Ibrahim. And I think the story of Somaliland is an extraordinary story that everyone should study. It's very important at a time when Somalia has become a dysfunctional, failed state, that Somaliland was able to build a rule of law society. That's incredible. So my congratulations to you. In answer to your question, when the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, spoke in Davos earlier this year, he talked about the way the middle power countries had to organize themselves, had to get together, had to create their own structures. And you know, in a way, one of the ironic advantages of what our president has done in terms of the U.S. retreat is that he sent a message to others: you have to be a little bit more self-reliant. That's not bad. That's not bad. And I think the middle powers, but not just the middle powers. I mean, Lithuania is not a middle power. It's smaller. It has the tremendous influence because of the way it's been, you know, represent the freedom cause. But it's the smaller countries have to get together. And my great hope, I mean, Mantas runs an organization called the Community of Democracies, which was, I mean, take a look at the history of this organization. It was created by our Secretary of State, who was also head of the NED's Democratic Institute, Madeleine Albright, in the year 2000 when she was Secretary of State. She and the Polish Foreign Minister, Bronislaw Geremek, got together. They had a big meeting in Warsaw that was attended by over 100 countries. They adopted a terrific declaration on democracy, the Warsaw Declaration. But then, you know, it was right at the end of the Clinton administration, and nobody took it seriously after that. I mean, for a lot of different reasons, it never, I mean, probably most people here never heard of the Community of Democracies. But I think that we're at a point now where we have to think about rebuilding. And I've talked to Mantas about this. I'm not preempting anything here. He's thinking about it too. How do we take this coalition that already exists and help reform it and bring together like-minded countries who want to fight the battle? So in addition to having a forum like we have here in Taiwan with Forum 2000, we have an international intergovernmental democracy organization that actually believes in supporting freedom and democracy. And I think it could have a real impact.
Thank you so much, Carl. So we're out of time, and our panelists will stick around for a little bit if you want to talk to them. And please join me to thank all of them once again for their great contribution. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Okay, so welcome to the second panel. My name is Ting Ting Liu. I'm a news anchor and a senior defense and foreign affairs correspondent with TVBS News in Taiwan. So I have to give special thanks to Foreign 2000 and also the Forum for Democracy and Cooperation for hosting this panel, because as you can see, we have very distinguished guests on stage with us today. And I'll first give a brief introduction about today's panel and also, of course, our guests on stage. So today's topic is actually on beyond great power politics. What can middle and smaller democracies actually do? So I see that this is a continuation of the first panel, when in the first panel we talk about the challenges we are facing right now. And on this panel, I want to talk about like what are some concrete actions that we can actually do to ensure that democracies, be it middle or small, can actually cooperate together to make this better. So I think this forum comes at a very timely time, because we actually see that US President Donald Trump actually used the term G2 quite often within the past year. So he first used the term last year when he posted on Truth Social, when he talked about like how G2 will be convening shortly. And we're actually seeing that there are more increasing discussion about what kind of a G2 world, the idea that global outcomes are ultimately decided by Washington and Beijing. So if that's true, what does that leave middle and smaller democracies? Are they participants in shaping the international order, or simply adapting to decisions made by larger powers? So with that, I want to introduce my guests on stage first. So first, we are actually very honored to have Thomas Petricek, who served as the Foreign Minister of Czech Republic from 2018 to 2021. During a period of intensifying geopolitical competition in Europe and beyond, he became known for advocating a principled and values-driven foreign policy while strengthening Czech engagement within Europe, NATO, and Indo-Pacific. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Petricek. So next, we have our second speaker, Ms. Delia Albert, former Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines and the first woman to hold that post. With a distinguished diplomatic career spanning decades, she has been long involved in ASEAN diplomacy, regional cooperation, and the Philippines' engagement with an increasingly complex strategic environment. So please join me in welcoming Secretary Albert. And our next speaker is Vice Minister Xu Sijian of Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, also a longtime friend of mine. So he has a very distinguished profile, especially that, we have been seeing many foreign ministers on stage. And he used to be the Deputy Foreign Minister of Taiwan. So he has a background in both academia and policy making, and he has focused extensively on Indo-Pacific security, democratic resilience, and Taiwan's role amid growing geopolitical competition in the region. Let's welcome Vice Minister Xu. And last but not least, our gentleman next to me is our Honorable Paulson Panapa, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Labour and Trade of Tuvalu. As representative of one of the Pacific's small but increasingly strategically significant democracy, he brings an important perspective on how smaller states navigate both climate challenges and intensifying geopolitical competition. So let's welcome Mr. Panapa. Okay, I want to begin the floor with a question, is that, if small and middle democracies matter so much, what exactly can we do other than just issuing statements? So to all of you on the floor, do middle and smaller democracies genuinely have strategic agency today, or are they ultimately constrained by major power competition? So Mr. Panapa, please.
Thank you very much, moderator. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Before I say a few words, I would like to first of all thank our organizers and as well as the government of Taiwan for having us here in Taiwan. It's great to be back here in Taiwan. I think this is probably my sixth time in Taiwan on other matters, but the first time on this forum here. So thank you very much. Yeah, Tuvalu is one of the smallest democracies, but also we consider ourselves as the most determined. This session asks a question that resonates deeply with us. What can middle and small democracy actually do in a world shaped by great power rivalry? The program for this forum reminds us that democratic coordination is too often fragmented, even as geopolitical pressures rises. Yet, it also reminds us that much of the world's democratic future may depend on what we, the smaller democracies, are willing and able to do together. Let me offer Tuvalu's perspective, which is shaped by our vulnerability, but also by our conviction. First, small democracies are not spectators. We are frontline actors. Tuvalu lives every day with the consequences of global decisions which we did not make, from climate impacts to economic shocks to strategic competition in our region. But this has never made us passive. We have taken our place in the global climate diplomacy. We have championed ocean stewardship, and we have spoken clearly on the importance of democratic values and the rule of law. Our experience shows that small states can lead, and when we speak with moral clarity, and when we act with consistency. Secondly, coalition serves as a force multiplier for our efforts. The most effective coalitions for small democracies are those that are small enough to act and broad enough to matter. For Tuvalu, this includes the Pacific Islands Forum, the Islands of Small Island States, AOSIS, and cross-regional partnerships that bring together Indo-Pacific and European democracies. These coalitions allow us to shape outcomes on issues where we have legitimacy, on climate justice, maritime governance, labor mobility, and human-centered security. They also allow us to stand together when any one of us faces pressure or coercion. Thirdly, we must turn alignment into action. The session description highlights a central challenge. Democratic coordination remains fragmented. Tuvalu sees this clearly. Too often, democracies agree in principle, but act alone in practice. We can change this by sharing early warning information on coercive behavior, pooling capacity in areas like cyber resilience and election integrity, and coordinating diplomatic messaging when democratic norms are challenged. When small democracies act together, we reduce the cost of standing alone. Fourth, our vulnerabilities can be sources of leadership. Tuvalu is vulnerable to climate change, to economic dependence, to external shocks. But vulnerability has given us a unique voice. It has taught us agency. It has taught us resilience. And it has taught us that democracy must deliver dignity, security, and trust for its people. Our lived experience is not a weakness. It is a contribution to global democratic cooperation. Finally, I believe we must leave Taipei with a commitment to do more together. This forum is not just another meeting. It is an opportunity to build the trust and practical cooperation that smaller democracies need. Tuvalu stands ready to work with partners in the Indo-Pacific, in Europe and beyond, to strengthen democratic resilience, protect open societies, and ensure that no democracy, large or small, faces pressure alone. Great power politics may shape the environment, but it does not define our agency. Small democracies are not passengers. We are navigators, and we are guardians of the principles that matters to all the individuals that value freedom. I thank you.
Thank you, Foreign Minister. And next I will have to trouble Vice Minister Xu.
Thank you, Ting Ting. The moderator just gave very kind words to introduce my backgrounds, but I would like to add a few more. Most importantly, my connection with Forum 2000, started with in 2016 to 2018 when I was the president of Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, and it was also at that time that I get to know Carl and build very good connection between NED and TFD. I'm still very proud of that past. But today, I'm given another task talking about how the small and medium democracies should work together based on the experiences of Taiwan as a medium power, medium democracy, coping with the international as well as domestic challenges. I will focus on the connection between democracy and three other concepts: security, artificial intelligence, and resilience. My main argument is these three concepts, as the goals of small and medium democracies should be pursued in line with consolidation and strengthening of democracy. They should be democracy-oriented and democracy-centered, not the otherwise. Here are my three points of my argument. First, democracy-oriented security. There are also 3 points in each of these 3 points. First, democratic peace can only be earned through joint deterrence and the strength. Democratic peace cannot be earned by just trying to make good connection with authoritarianism or totalitarianism. The second point is democracies should ally with democracies, not the totalitarianism or authoritarianism. And the third is democracies need to have strong commitment to defend themselves, to strengthen their own national defense. We should not depend on the protection of great powers. In short, democracy needs defense, and defense should work for democracy. My second point is about democracy-centered AI. AI is driving our economy right now. We are stepping into an AI-driven economic time. And pretty soon, AI will become another layer of our civilization. But AI should not dominate over the value of democracy. That's the point. So we should not allow AI to serve totalitarian or authoritarian purposes. So this is a risk. And second, in all the democracies, we should rein in big AI companies with ethics and transparency. And the third point is democracies need to collaborate on AI development. So to sum up, democracies do need AI. We need to win the AI competition. But AI should also serve democratic purposes, not totalitarian or authoritarian ones. My third point is about democracy-centered resilience. I'm going to talk about 3 kinds of resilience. First is the economic resilience or supply chain resilience. Democracies need to collaborate with each other to build supply chain resilience. As we understand right now, China dominates many important components as well as raw materials in the world. During the COVID, we understand there are bottlenecks in the global supply chain. And that's where we learned the lessons. And the second point is civil defense or civil resilience programs for disaster relief help consolidate social trust and the democracy. So strengthening the programs of civil defense or civil resilience is important for democracy. That's for social resilience. And third, media literacy and fact-checking civil society organizations are critical to contribute to countering disinformation and help build political trust and political resilience. So the third point is, in the age of rampant disinformation, we should strengthen political resilience with the contribution of civil society. So in total, these 3 points, the security, AI, and resilience all need to be democracy-centered, other than other ways. So this is the 3 points I recommend small and medium democracies to focus on taking concrete actions to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister Xu. And let's have Ms. Albert next. Ms. Albert.
Good morning. Like everybody else, I have to tell how many times I've been to your country.
Thank you. You're very welcome here.
I just told the minister I've been here 4 times. After all, we're next door neighbors. We're only a few hundred kilometers away from each other. The first time I came to chair the STAR initiative of APEC. Was that a cheer for APEC? No, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, as you know, where we have both Hong Kong and Chinese Taipei as regular members. And the Philippines is one of the 4 who started the ball rolling with the Asia-Pacific region. And I remember the theme of our meeting in Kaohsiung was how to secure trade in the Asia-Pacific region. I look at the recent Shanghai meeting of APEC. It was the same discussion all over again. So I wondered to myself, what happened between 2003 and the present? Anyway, I think that this collaboration in the region is a very important way for small and medium democracies to be able to continue relationships. But perhaps it's important for me to cite a few dates in our story. I like Dr. Lin's stories. I remember Steve Jobs saying that to deliver a message, one must have a story. So I thought this morning as I was listening to the panel that as early as 1972, the Philippines decided to open up its foreign policy. I've been in the diplomatic service for 45 years before I retired. And I think it was a crucial decision for our country to open up. And we have been guided by the same mantra that we stated in 1972 when we decided to open relationship with countries behind the Iron Curtain then. And the foreign minister, Romulo, said to explain to our public why we are opening relations with the countries of Eastern Europe, and it has maintained our line of foreign policy. We are friend to all, enemy to none. And up to today, I hear it being mentioned all over again that Philippine foreign policy is guided by the mantra that we are friends to all, enemy to none. And I think it was repeated yesterday by our president who is visiting Tokyo when he talked about the Philippine relationship with the countries that are neighboring in terms of geographic relationship in the region as we face major challenges. The second date, that was 1972. In 1986, the Philippines had its people power revolution. Some people don't call it a revolution because it wasn't a major change. But I did put in a title, I qualified it as a gentle revolution when people themselves decided to take on a very authoritative government. And I remember having a wonderful lunch with President Havel, and when we welcomed him to the Philippines, and I was very straightforward, I asked, "Why are you in the Philippines?" And it's always good to be quite frank. As a woman, you can do it. I don't think the men can say that. And so he said, "Oh, young lady," I was young then, and he said, "I have come to your country to pay my respects to a people who made people power a choice for regime change." And I've always remembered those words because it was how we were not quite appreciated for it for some time in the region, but after a while, people power revolution in the Philippines was accepted, that the people have a stake in changing whatever authoritarian leadership there would be. And the third date I'd like to mention in terms of our experience, of course, is 1967. 1967 was a crucial year for our region when we decided to get together with neighbors and set up the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And my diplomatic life has been focused on making sure that our commitment to our neighbors and to ourselves is a continuous process, and that it ensures the kind of life we aspire for ourselves in the region. However, it is very interesting for anyone to look at ASEAN, how a merry mix of governments we have. We have democracies. We have a big country like Indonesia. We have a small country like Laos. We have authoritarian government in some of the countries. We have a constitutional monarchy. We have parliamentary democracy. We have a presidential system. Yet, we feel we are one. We feel that we have a common stake in the future of our people. It takes a lot of determination to keep us together in spite of the differences. I suppose this is where we commit ourselves to saying, look, we're friends to all, enemy to none. We maintain that until, of course, some challenges come our way. And for many, many years, I was very proud to say that ASEAN, which is now 11 countries in the region, never had any problem with each other until Cambodia and Thailand broke out a few years ago. However, it does not change the situation in our region, that we try to be helpful to each other and to maintain that kind of peace that we always wanted from the beginning when we organized ourselves in 1967. This year, the Philippines is chair of ASEAN. It's the 59th year of ASEAN, and we have chosen as our theme, navigating our future together. Note that we always try to put in who we are, that we work together in spite of differences that we have in terms of the authoritarian or non-authoritarian governments that we have. And I think this is the strength of ASEAN, that we are able to keep that unity in terms of, as the Indonesian says, there's unity in diversity. And we hope that this keeps for the next 100 years. We're looking at the 100th year anniversary of ASEAN. And I was talking to someone last night, talking about our future in the United Nations. And I remember when I chaired the Security Council in 2004, how some of our neighbors were saying, what are you going to talk about? How are you going to lead? Our major contributions is the respect for our civil society, which has been mentioned in many of the speeches before us. And my chosen agenda was the role of civil society in post-conflict peace building. And it's for this reason that I've visited some of the civil society groups in Taiwan, and the Sushi Foundation, for example, which is doing a great job. And in spite of all the differences in our region, we maintain that kind of relationship with our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia. So next up, last but not least, let's have Mr. Thomas Pachak. So can you share your perspective too?
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank to all organizers for putting this conference together. I think it's coming in a very important moment for all democracies, and I hope this is not the last time we are meeting, either in Taipei or somewhere else. Because I think that to discuss what smaller or mid-sized democracies can do is right now very important. What kind of strategic options are for us, what kind of challenges we are facing. But even though I would risk a lot, because it's always difficult to compete with Americans in storytelling, but I was inspired by Karl in the first panel, because I realized I'm a child of third wave of democratic revolutions. I was born in the middle. Before the fall of communism, I was always considering myself being privileged to grow up after the Velvet Revolution in Czechia, which brought not only freedom, but also opportunities for young people like me. But honestly, I never was forced to think about what kind of strategic opportunities or strategic challenges are there for smaller democracies in the 1990s or early 2000s. I was still growing up, so I was not probably thinking about it. So I don't have many anecdotes from the time, but what was quite clear in the 1990s and 2000s, 2010s was that small democracies have more or less natural, logical choice to try to anchor themselves within a broader community of democratic states led by Washington. To some extent, it was a strategy of bang-bagooning. For me, I was witnessing our accession to NATO, to European Union. It was a kind of epic moment for my country to become part of the European family of democracies. However, since I think we are now facing growing challenges from within or from outside. We are witnessing fragmentation of the global order. We are increasingly facing the challenge of authoritarian alternatives. And we are also facing challenges within our democratic family. And there are, I think, two major traps for smaller, mid-sized democracies. First one is fatalism, or a feeling of victimhood. And here I would like to warn, actually, small democracies' agency is not in fact restrained by lack of capacities or capabilities. If I look at all the small and mid-sized democracies collectively, can you guess what is the size of our collective GDP? Is somebody having a guess?
Any guess from the floor?
it's 45 trillion US dollars. 40 to 45% of the global economy. Smaller and mid-sized democracies represent collectively the same as US, China, and Russia. When it comes to defense expenditures, smaller and mid-sized democracies are spending 800 billion US dollars on our defense. We are matching United States defense budget together. So the capacities and capabilities are not our problem. It's not a problem for our agency. It's a fragmentation of our cooperation. It's a lack of cooperation. The second trap, in fact, is that some of the larger, mid-sized democracies, but even small democracies sometimes are now tempted to mimic, to imitate great powers, especially when it comes to what we see as a moment of transactional politics. And I would like to warn that small democracies can't regain agency or protect agency by behaving like smaller versions of great powers. I think we need different strategy. And what I would like to propose here is also an alternative democratic strategy framework I call APICS. Because I think small democracies actually together can show that they have something to offer to the world. And what APICS means? First, it means agility. Actually, smaller countries, mid-sized countries, are faster to adapt, faster to come up with new ideas. But small democracies also are strong in principled engagements, or we can call it sometimes principled flexibility. Not flexible principles, but principled flexibility. It means that we are very much rooted in a world or the ideas of rule-based order, rules, laws, and we need to protect it. Especially non-European smaller democracies have strong legitimacy when it comes to protecting principled engagement. Innovation is the third one. Not only technological. We are speaking a lot about technological innovations. What we need today in a world defined by the crisis of multilateralism is policy innovation, testing new ways of governance. We need to think out of the box when it comes to how to engage with other democracies, how to cooperate. It brings me to the fourth point, which is collaborative frameworks. Smaller democracies usually realize that they cannot do much alone. So that's why they are having collaborative approach in their DNA. And that is the way we need to also identify our opportunities in a collaborative way, not as unilateral options. And lastly, very often we forget that for democracy, solidarity is important. And I think we need a normative framework. We need to bring a new proposition, value proposition, which is rooted in solidarity. And to conclude, I would like to also stress that smaller democracies right now, those who are not trapped in these two potential risks, are actually thinking in a way how to use, without naming it, this framework through promoting different multilateral frameworks of cooperation. I think multilateralism is not a replacement here for multilateralism. It is something that can bring new ideas, and democratic multilateralism, I think, is the way how to strengthen our agency and how to protect democracy in the challenging world we are facing right now.
Thank you. Okay, so the time now is 11:09, so that leaves us around half an hour. So my plan is actually I want to open more time for questions for Q&A. I'll probably leave 15 minutes there. But right now, I'll just go through a quick round of questions and let's open to the floor. So I want to ask actually Vice Minister Xu, is that Taiwan is often discussed as a security challenge. But from Taiwan's perspective, what practical forms of democratic cooperation has actually proven to be most meaningful?
Well, as you understand, Taiwan usually is not a member of ordinary international organizations or international major forums. We should, first of all, we have a very vibrant civil society. This is the strength of Taiwan, and we should make the best use of it to have more forums like this to interact with actors from around the world, including our neighbors, and to promote the trust of each other. So that's first. Second, we are one of the best country in the world to have the best technology, and that's the strength of Taiwan. We should make the best use of that. Like I said, right now we're stepping into an AI-driven economy globally, and Taiwan occupies a very important critical position in the AI supply chain. And so we should also make the best use of that. As I said, we should promote supply chain resilience among democracies. So this is also a concrete step we should take. And the third is Taiwan occupies a critically important position in global security. Maintaining the peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait has to do with the global stability and prosperity. So we should urge other democracies to contribute in their own way to deter the next war from happening, especially across the Taiwan Strait, and also help stabilizing the peace and stability across the strait. I think that's the interest, the common interest of all democracies, including big, medium, and small democracies.
Thank you. I'm so glad you brought up the concept of security. So I'm going to ask Mr. Panapa here, is that when you talk about smaller states like Tuvalu, security threats are actually not only military, but how do you see the relationship between climate vulnerability and geopolitical vulnerability? And how does Tuvalu, as a small island democracy, plan to navigate through it?
Thank you, moderator. Yeah, I think I must, if most of us here haven't heard about the Falipili Treaty that we had with Australia. Australia has legally committed to protect or come to our aid in times of needs, whether it's global epidemic or military aggression or those things. So, yeah, I know we are vulnerable to everything, including climate change, and so we're going to rely on our other democracies, especially like Australia and New Zealand, and of course our the region, the Pacific region, where we have the Pacific Islands Forum, where it consists of about 19 states at this point in time. So, because we are so small, we can only disappear, or we are nothing in the global stage. So it's very important to group up together, and the more countries are involved, then the more give us more power and ability to leverage issues that we want to put across. Thank you.
When we talk about Pacific Island nations, we actually pretty tied between big powers like rivalry and small island nations like Tuvalu. I'm just wondering, how do we actually navigate, not only be treated as a strategic terrain, but also as equal partners, and how could actually democracy continue to prevail, especially across the Pacific Islands? I believe, people in the Pacific Islands are trying to advocate for democracy, and we are trying to make sure that we can actually determine our own future. What kind of cooperation do you think that is actually more necessary to ensure that this is going to continue to happen?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't get the last part of your question. If you can.
Sorry, I should make myself clearer. So I'm just curious, what kind of cooperation do you think that smaller island nations could actually work together, not to only rely on bigger powers in the region, like mentioned earlier, be it Australia, be it United States, what kind of cooperation, unity should actually island nations work together?
Well, as I mentioned, the Pacific Islands Forum, and probably one good example is forum island countries have agreed to set up, for example, a Pacific Resilience Fund. So, because we know accessing these green climate funds are so difficult to access, so we took the initiative to set up something like this and to show our larger partners that we know the challenges against us is so important. So that's why we had to get together and get something like that going. It's reliance on other countries is not. We are not going to rely on them for forever and ever. But at least we get together and do something and show the world that we are determined to make sure that we do things that will protect us from the vulnerability or the impacts of climate change and sea level rise. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll move on to the Philippines. Philippines is a fascinating story because it's constantly balancing, and also bring up the ASEAN example earlier when you talk about how the Philippines is friends to all, enemies to none. So I'm just curious, the Philippines has experienced multiple phases of engagement with both Washington and Beijing. So what lessons should middle democracies learn about while maintaining strategic autonomy without strategic isolation?
Yeah. I remember in 1991, we work around of course, our national interests, but at the same time, I think the element that really keeps us moving forward is the fact that we are part of a bigger community. I remember when we were struggling how we would move ASEAN forward, and the main link was the cooperation. From the beginning, it was cooperation. We realized that we needed something more than cooperation to strengthen our own national positions in the global arena. So we decided next step is integration. So as late as 1992, we decided, hey, how could we compete with the rest of the world that's moving forward? So it was a very sensitive but very important political decision that we would integrate the economies together. And it took quite a difficult persuasion because the levels of development among the ASEAN countries is so different. One would have 1 billion people, the other one we just have, if you look at Timor-Leste, who just joined us last November, or Brunei, big and small, that's who we are. And when we felt more confident about ourselves, we decided, well, we can be a community, and we progress from a small community to a big community, which meant also giving up a lot of our own limited interest for a bigger cause, which is ASEAN. I think we do have our frailties as well, big differences in, as I said earlier, in authoritarian monarchies, presidential and parliamentary. But we have amassed, this is a very unique experience of ASEAN, that from 1972, I believe, Australia came to say, hey, you're moving forward, we can move forward together. Australia became our first dialogue partner. And that partnership has gone into ASEAN +1, which meant Australia. Then we decided, at least during my time, to strengthen our relationship with East Asia, which was China, Japan, and Korea. And so we developed ASEAN +1, ASEAN +3. And this has really proven a very useful tool for us to keep the momentum in terms of growing our own economies and keeping the region safe, and at least as far as the relationship with these countries are concerned, prosperity, of course, came with the economic relationship that developed. So with ASEAN +1, ASEAN +3, then we thought about strengthening our political and security relationship. So we thought of the ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum, where we invited countries that were interested in maintaining the peace and stability in the region. Today we have ASEAN +20, more or less, who have joined us in our quest for keeping peace and security in the area. And to ensure this, we have 9 years after ASEAN, we drew up our Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. First, we were 5 countries that joined and got together, the 6, and then 10, and then 11. Today, we have 58 countries that have joined us in our Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, which ensures the kind of peace and security and economic prosperity that we have been established from the very beginning. So it's a moving forward, progressing. We do have our issues, but the fact that we also drew up our charter to keep us together intact, and I think this is a major accomplishment for small and medium-sized countries in the region to be able to cope with the rivalry that we find together. We are proud to be able to invite both Mr. Trump and Mr. Xi Jinping in the same forum. And this, to us, is a very it's a uniquely ASEAN way. You hear a lot about ASEAN way. What is the ASEAN way? It's keeping everybody an ally somehow. And if we have issues, we do say so, in the same way that we are mainly right now dealing with our issues in the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea. But we believe in maintaining the importance of respect for international law. And this is where even we brought our own neighbor and in the region to the International Court of Justice. It doesn't mean we are no longer friends. It means we maintain that relationship, but if we think that there is a challenge to our national interest, then we go through the legal means, which is the tribunal court in The Hague, because we are one of the early signatories to the UNCLOS, United Nations Law of the Sea. And this is what, to me, strengthens the unity and cooperation in keeping the peace and prosperity of 11 countries, so diverse, but yet united.
I want to ask Thomas about, I appreciate how you bring up the idea of APEX earlier, and also how, the number of 45 trillion USD of how actually 45.3 in USD of how democracies usually combine. You know, that actually is a very proving number of how much soft power and how much cooperation could actually come up, you know, when democracies unite together. But I'm just curious, you know, from a European perspective, can coalitions of medium-sized democracies still meaningfully constrain larger powers?
It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question, but yeah, I think they could. They can. And not only because of the size of their economies. Actually, this 40-something trillions is excluding United States. It's only like smaller democracies or mid-sized democracies, like Japan, European countries, Canada, Brazil, South Africa, Taiwan. And I think what is the major challenge for the agency here is really that we don't have coordination mechanisms like in place to allow us, for example, to work together on how to address issues, for example, like economic coercion of big powers. Because I look at the toolbox we are seeing right now, it is increasing transactionalism. So I give you a little, give me more. That's the logic Donald Trump is introducing. And Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and many others are saying, yeah, that's great. I want this as well. Okay, I come in the moment when you are vulnerable and I will try to extort something from you in exchange for something. So transactionalism is, in a way, a very ugly method. Economic coercion is another tool major powers are using. And some unilateral imposed rules is also like right now a challenge for us. And in all cases, I think what is missing is first that small democracies do not have a coordination mechanism how to not only manifest but deliver on solidarity. So, for example, we faced the situation, we have friends from Lithuania, when Lithuania established, allowed establishment of a Taipei office in Vilnius, was facing economic coercion from China. And it took us, even within the EU, a couple of weeks, months of debate how to react to the economic coercion against one of us. And there were issues, okay, are we going to do something for Lithuania? Is it their fault? No, I think that's exactly what the big powers are expecting, that we are divided, we will not react in a concert to these kind of like pressures they are exercising to get what they want. So I think that's why APEX is ending with solidarity, because it's one of the values that keeps families together. It's a solidarity among the family members that is, to some extent, unconditional. That notwithstanding what's happening, what kind of father I would be if I don't defend my child? What kind of friend I would be if I don't stand up for my friend, if he's bullied? And I think right now we have a problem here. But I think we can overcome it. I think more and more these discussions we are having here and elsewhere are showing that people like Canadian Prime Minister and many other leaders from smaller mid-sized democracies are able to stand to the big guys and saying, no, this is not the way the world will work. Collectively, we are proposing something different and we are able to defend it. And that's inspiration for us, I think. Mark Carney, what he did in the past, and many others are courageous enough to stand up and say, no, Donald, Xi Jinping, Vladimir, no, this is not the way the world will work, because we together can face you.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So this panel is very interesting. There are actually, we're talking about small, medium democracies. So just think about this title of this panel. There are two layers of game involved. One layer of game is democracy versus non-democracies. Another layer is small and medium power versus the other. So we're playing two layers of games. So just reminding everyone here, think in that way.
Thank you so much. It's very difficult to navigate, but I believe with courage and with support, democracy will prevail. And I believe we have around 10 minutes for Q&A, so I'll open the floor. It's very bright from up here, I can't really see. So, raise your hand and please identify yourself and which agency or unit are you from, and also please direct to who you want to ask. Okay, so I see a lady here.
Pass the microphone?
Yep, please pass her a microphone if possible. Yep, this is coming to you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful discussions, but I'll quickly jump into the question. My question is to Thomas, and I love the way that you coined the concept of apex democracy. There's not going to be any coordinated mechanism in place against economic coercion, because the moment we have it, the great powers will come and pick holes. So when we got slapped with, when India, my part of the world, apologies, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Shriparna Pathak. I am a professor of international relations from Jindal Global University, India. So when India got the double whammy of tariffs from the PRC, tariff and non-tariff barriers from the PRC forever, and tariffs from the United States of America, European Union became India's new best friend. And we have the mother of all trade deals and so on. Taiwan has been a partner, Japan is a time-tested friend, and so on. If we have a coordinated mechanism in place, then actors will come and find loopholes. Getting things done through the government level is going to be difficult. But here's my suggestion, track 1.5 and track 2 works. Now, to maintain peace, we need to prepare for war forever. For actors based in the PRC, they have found loopholes in democracies, and their actors have even found space in Taiwan's media space, India's media space, Europe's media space, and so on. And they furthered their narratives. Can we give them a taste of their own medicine? We cannot, because they are opaque societies. What do we do about this? There are conflicts across the world, as terrible as they are. There's a conflict in West Asia, in Russia, Ukraine, in Pakistan, and so on. When PRC's defense technology or AI does not work, as they did not in Iran, or in Venezuela, or in Pakistan, we as actors are working and writing in silos. Can we have more coordination on this so that when we are preparing for the next conflict, and unfortunately conflict is the norm, we can have better cooperation in pushing back against the narrative which autocratic actors actually push out? Thank you.
Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment, and I take it more like a comment. And sorry, I haven't actually included India in small and mid-sized powers. So I took India that if we have India in this group, the collective GDP and military expenditures will be even higher. So I see India already as a great power. And on the track 1.5 and 2 of, let's say, coordination, yeah, I agree. I didn't mention that, for example, what will be important for us is to strengthen our capacity to defend through social resilience against these actors, but also to turn it against them to some extent. We need to be able to penetrate in the information space, to try to not only explain our populations what is happening and to mobilize the public support for what we need to do, but also to try to penetrate there. And I think there is one principle we are not effectively using in our reaction, and it's the reciprocity. It's one of the historical central diplomatic mechanism, reciprocity. So for example, why I should allow Russian, Chinese, Iranian media outlets, influencers to penetrate my information space, when we cannot do the same. We don't have access to information spaces in authoritarian regimes. So I think that's just simple reciprocity, which should be applied more rigorously than we are applying. And to address your core question about the weaknesses of our coordination when it comes to coercion of big powers, there is still a lot to improve. Honestly, we are probably not as fast as we should be on putting in place the principles or mechanisms of solidarity, protecting smaller actors that are most vulnerable, like Taiwan right now, or other frontier democracies that has been discussed in the previous panel. Yeah, I think we need to think about more of a, I won't say automatic, because we will not have automatic mechanism, but more credible ways how we can bank together when the need is. And I'm happy to hear that India is also thinking in this way.
Thank you.
Can I follow, although the question is not addressed to me, but a few things. On the economic and security side, medium power like us, we should diversify our dependence on big powers. Oh, I have to say coordination among small and medium countries is difficult because it's very costly. And it takes leadership to be able to coordinate. And usually we depend on big power to be the coordinator. But here we exactly would like to diversify from our dependence on big power. So someone needs to play the role of leadership, and that's difficult. So unless you have a family like ASEAN, you take turns to be the chair. Otherwise, it's difficult. But diversify our dependence on big market or big power is a good strategy. That's something we can do from now on. And gradually, when you diversify your dependence, and you actually have more chips in the bargaining. So that would be a great strategy.
And Delia, a quick comment.
Just a comment on India. The Philippines today is the coordinator of ASEAN-India relations. And talking about diversifying, etc., we have been working with India on the BrahMos, what do you call it, missile. So we're not just looking at one or the other, we're looking at our partners. And to me, this is the wonderful thing about ASEAN, that we can go to India, and we do have a very good relationship. I just came from India, actually, and because we are the dialogue coordinator, where one country takes care of one relationship. I did ASEAN-EU for about 4 years, and we were able to establish an ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, etc. Now with India, we have a very robust defense cooperation agreement going on. And in fact, I think they have just tested the latest, I don't know what it's called BrahMos or missile. So we, in spite of being a member of a bigger whole, we are, one has to remember that ASEAN is not like the EU. We don't have a supranational body that will dictate to what we should do among the members. We are more or less working on our own in terms of our interest. And to me, this is part of what we wanted ASEAN to be. We don't have a parliament like the EU. We don't have a common security agency like the NATO. And that's why we can deal with India directly, and the rest of the members don't have to object. We can do it because we are independent in our own right to be able to deal with our dialogue partners. And India is one. And fortunately, this next 3 years, we are coordinating ASEAN-India relations.
Right. Any more questions from the floor? Okay, there's one there, a gentleman there. Please pass him a microphone. Is there?
Hi, my name is Jack Lee. I'm pretty impressed by the Deputy Minister of Defense, Dr. Xu's points of view. He said that the AI competition between democratic countries and authoritarian countries is very important. And because as we know that in China, the Communist Party used the AI to control the people's life. They use AI to expand their military capacity to, invade some kind of, sovereignty issue like, with Philippines, with Vietnam, in southern China Sea. So, in the United States, the Joe Biden administration, they do have a kind of AI regulation or AI or technological regulation toward China. But right now, Donald Trump administration try to make a deal with China. So the regulation might be decreased or decline. So what are we gonna do to face the new situation? Is that possible that the democratic countries to organize or to cooperate with as a kind of non-rate or democratic supply chain in the whole world? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I believe his question is about how democracies should actually work together to ensure a democratic AI and whether that's possible in terms of supply chain. Is there anyone who care to take the question?
I will go first, but I also would like to hear the opinion from other panelists. Thank you, Dr. Lee's question. Jack is a good friend of mine. I think like I said, following my own point previously, to diversify, first of all, you have to be strong yourself. So in the game of AI, Taiwan, as I said, Taiwan plays a very important and critical role in the global supply chain. So that's our basically bargaining chip. When you have something people want, then you have bargaining power. So this is very important. So you have to build that on your own. And the reason why Jensen Huang comes very frequently to Taiwan is not because his family is from Taiwan, it's because he needs to buy components from us. Okay, that's where our bargaining chip is. And when you have that bargaining power, then diversify your market. This is very important. So we hope that our European friends can also expand their AI industrial capabilities so that we can diversify our market. We can sell more to Europe. So diversification, again, is the key word. When you have diversified markets, then you talk about coordination or collaboration. When your market is focused in only one country, it's very difficult to talk about that.
May I mention something that came up very recently? I don't know if you've heard about Pax Silica.
Yeah.
Well, we just signed up to be, I think we're the only second ASEAN country, second to Singapore. Only Singapore and the Philippines out of 16 countries have signed up to Pax Silica. I don't know much about it, but I just read something that came up, and it's a US-led international initiative focused in strengthening, coordinating, quote-unquote, trusted supply chains for advanced technologies. And we just signed an agreement for them to set up this center in the western part of the Philippines, which is really very strategic. And it's specially designed for semiconductors, artificial intelligence, infrastructure, critical minerals, advanced manufacturing, logistics, and associated energy and data infrastructure. I don't know much about it. We just signed into it. There are 16 countries that have signed, and 2 countries are observers to the eventual signing, which is Taiwan and Canada. So I can say that I admit I don't know much. It hasn't been we just signed it a few weeks ago, but the Philippines is a signatory to Pax Silica.
I just wanted to follow on what the Deputy Minister said, that first of all, I hope myself that Europe will catch up and there will be more options for diversification. But what is also important is to look at that there is actually a lot right now happening at the level of middle powers when it comes to AI. India, for example, is increasingly important actor in this field. EU-India has launched last year a very close cooperation on developing industrial AI, but also general AI together, meaning that you combine together two large data markets. But I think there is one issue, and it's not only about China. I think that in general, in this era, it's important that as a smaller, mid-sized countries, we keep our autonomy, and also we protect our sovereignty over how our data are accessed, how others can work with them. Look, for example, right now we have not only issue with China when it comes to AI, we have increasingly in the digital era in Europe issue with the approach of American administration, questioning our own regulation and legislation, protecting our citizens, for example, when it comes to their data and their privacy. And I think that this is among partners not nice to see, that the big ally is actually attacking your sovereign decision how to work with, for example, data protection. So this is one more issue we need to focus on, and that's where other partners like Canada, like Australia, India are coming into play to help develop alternatives and to strengthen our autonomy.
Okay, a real quick comment from Mr. Panapa.
Thank you. I won't comment too much on AI because it's still pretty new to our part of the world. But I want to just to relate how the influence of China in Indo-Pacific. As you will know now, there's only 3 Pacific Island countries that have relations with Taiwan. And yeah, it's last night during dinner I asked Jacob whether, you know, a lot of countries, Pacific countries now are switching alliance to China. Is that a loss of democracy or? Yeah, but I thought, well, we thought so. So what can we do? What can we do to or this forum? Should we work on trying to get them back to? Yeah, the other question too I asked Jacob last night. Do you think China will, because this country has switched alliance, do you think they will also try to convert the way they govern their countries? That's something we don't know, but maybe somebody would have some knowledge on that, and we welcome to share that with us. Yeah, just want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panapa. So I'm afraid we are run out of time, so I really have to end this forum. And once again, let's give a warm welcome of applause to our guests on stage for their very, very insightful comments today. Okay, so with that, I will conclude the second panel, Beyond Great Power Politics and What Can Middle and Smaller Democracies Actually Do. So I believe the conclusion for today is that, well, we need to unite, we need to work together, and we need to diversify. Thank you so much. I believe we need to do a photo opportunity.